Bad day? Good. And now we will see who you really are. Anyone can feel powerful when the sun is shining and the plan is working. Anyone can speak of faith when results arrive on schedule. But the measure of a man is taken at dusk, after disappointment, after insult, after failure. What you do in the final hour of a bad day writes the first line of tomorrow. You want relief. You want comfort. You want someone to tell you it will be fine. I will not give you that. I will give you something better. I will show you how to convert a bad day into leverage. Most men lose twice. They lose once in the event and again in their reaction. A mistake at noon becomes self-doubt by evening. An argument at work becomes resentment at home. A failed attempt becomes a quiet decision to lower the aim. They do not end the day ends them. Picture this. You walk through your door carrying defeat. Your voice is heavier. Your posture bends slightly. You replay what went wrong. And before you sleep, you seal the lesson, not as growth, but as proof that you are not quite ready. Now imagine a different ending. Same setback, same disappointment. But instead of surrender, you sit in silence for 10 deliberate minutes. You ask, what did this teach me? You extract the lesson. You write one corrective action for tomorrow. You read your definite chief aim aloud as if nothing can diminish it. You finish strong. This is not about mood. It is about identity. A bad day is a test disguised as inconvenience. It asks a single question. Are you governed by events or by decision? The man who reacts emotionally compounds his losses. The man who responds deliberately compounds his power. You do not need a perfect day to succeed. You need a disciplined ending. Tonight, if the day has wounded you, you will be tempted to escape, to distract yourself, to numb the disappointment, to say, I will begin again tomorrow. Do not stand up. Correct one thing. Improve one habit. Go the extra mile in one small way before you rest. Send the message. Finish the task. Write the plan. End the day as a man in command, not as a victim of circumstance. So simple it feels almost insignificant. Yet, repeated nightly, it separates the resilient from the defeated. I promise you this. If you learn to finish strong, especially when the day was weak, you will not merely feel better, you will become better. Your confidence will no longer depend on smooth conditions. It will be built on your response, and response is power. Before we go further, decide this. Will you let today define you? Or will you define how today ends? Part 1, the second loss, why most men are defeated. Twice. A bad day is rarely fatal. It is rarely permanent. It is rarely decisive by itself. Yet most men allow it to become decisive because they suffer a second defeat before nightfall. The first defeat is the event. The second defeat is the reaction. The first may wound pride. The second reshapes identity. You lose a contract. You are corrected publicly. You attempt something and it collapses. These are events. They sting, but they pass. What does not pass so easily is the interpretation you assign to them before sleep. Interpretation seals experience. Most men relive disappointment repeatedly in the quiet hours of evening. They rehearse the argument. They replay the mistake. They imagine what others must think. And with each repetition, They engrave defeat more deeply than the event itself ever could. Thus they lose twice. The event cost them opportunity. The reaction cost them confidence. Confidence once weakened alters tomorrow's effort. Tone softens. Initiative slows. Risk tolerance shrinks. They may not notice it consciously, but the damage accumulates. This is why a bad day must not be permitted to conclude itself. If you allow the day to end you, you carry its weight forward. Consider how many ambitions dissolve not through catastrophe, but through accumulated discouragement. A single mistake at noon becomes self-doubt by evening. That self-doubt becomes hesitation the next morning. Hesitation becomes pattern. Pattern becomes character. Character determines destiny. Lincoln faced repeated political defeat before assuming the highest office in his land. Had he interpreted each loss as evidence of incapacity, history would be silent about him. He treated defeat as event, not identity. Edison endured thousands of unsuccessful attempts. He did not retire at night declaring himself incapable. He examined error, extracted lesson, and persisted. Ford encountered skepticism and financial setbacks. He did not interpret early resistance as final verdict. He corrected, refined, advanced. These men did not possess immunity from disappointment. They possessed discipline in interpretation. Pain is inevitable. Interpretation is optional. The crowd interprets a bad day as confirmation of limitation. The disciplined interpret it as instruction. Instruction strengthens, confirmation of limitation weakens. The difference lies in the final hour. Evening is dangerous because fatigue weakens vigilance. The mind becomes susceptible to suggestion. If you replay discouragement repeatedly before sleep, your subconscious accepts it as instruction. The subconscious does not distinguish between truth and rehearsal. It obeys repetition. If the final thought is, perhaps I am not ready, tomorrow will reflect caution. If the final thought is, this taught me what I required, tomorrow will reflect growth. Thus, the true contest after a bad day is not external. It is internal. Most men seek relief after disappointment. They distract themselves. They numb the sting with diversion. They postpone reflection. Postponement compounds error. Unexamined error repeats. Repeated error builds frustration. Frustration erodes ambition. Ambition eroded seeks comfort. Comfort replaces achievement. This cycle can consume 10 years. 10 years of near success, near effort, near courage, lost because the day was allowed to conclude itself without correction. You must understand that what you do after a bad day matters more than what occurred during it. The event may have been unavoidable. The reaction is chosen. When insult occurs, you may respond with resentment or refinement. When failure appears, you may respond with excuse or examination. Examination produces improvement. Excuse produces repetition. The powerful man does not deny disappointment. He feels it fully, but he refuses to seal it as identity. Identity is built in repetition. If you repeat discouragement nightly, discouragement becomes familiar. If you repeat correction nightly, strength becomes natural. The evening verdict is decisive. Ask yourself honestly, how many times have you ended a difficult day in complaint? How many times have you fallen asleep rehearsing frustration? How many times have you lowered your aim subtly because the day wounded your confidence? Each such ending shaped tomorrow, and tomorrow shaped next week, and next week shaped next year. A bad day need not be erased. It must be interpreted properly. Interpretation is power. The man who governs interpretation governs his growth. If you finish weakly, you train weakness. If you finish deliberately, you train resilience. Resilience is not born from smooth conditions. It is forged in the aftermath of friction. Friction reveals character. Character strengthened after friction becomes authority. Authority influences income, leadership, influence, and peace. Say these words quietly when disappointment strikes. Events do not define me, my response does. I refuse the second loss. I end this day in command. Such words are not empty encouragement. They are redirection. Redirection prevents compounding error. You may not control insult. You may not control rejection. You may not control immediate outcome, but you control interpretation. And interpretation determines whether today costs you one opportunity or 10 years. A bad day is a test disguised as inconvenience. It asks one question only. Will you allow circumstance to shape identity, or will you shape identity despite circumstance? Most men fail this test repeatedly. The disciplined man passes it consistently. He does not allow the day to define him. He defines how the day ends. That decision, repeated across months and years, produces a man unbreakable by temporary loss. And the world rewards such men. The next portion will reveal precisely how to reverse a bad day deliberately, how to convert setback into leverage before sleep claims you. For the day may wound you, but it must never end you. Part 2, the 10-minute reversal, how to convert a bad day into leverage. Now we come to the decisive hour. The setback has occurred. The insult has landed. The plan has faltered. You feel the weight of it. This is the moment that separates the drifting from the directed. You are not to deny the sting. You are not to pretend it did not happen. You are to interrupt its momentum. The first act is physical pause. Before speaking further, before distracting yourself, before seeking relief, sit in silence for a few deliberate minutes. Posture upright, breathing steady, no complaint, no rehearsal, no defense. Silence breaks emotional momentum. Emotion thrives on repetition. Silence weakens it. Most men rush from disappointment directly into distraction. They seek to escape the discomfort, but escape delays correction. Delayed correction multiplies error. In silence, ask one question only. What did this teach me? Not who was wrong, not why it was unfair. What did this teach me? The mind resists this question at first. It prefers blame. It prefers justification. Resist the resistance. Instruction hides inside every setback. If you search for blame, you leave empty-handed. If you search for lesson, you leave equipped. Write one corrective action immediately. Not 3, not 10. 1. If you spoke too quickly, you will speak more deliberately tomorrow. If you failed to prepare sufficiently, you will prepare earlier. If you avoided a difficult conversation, you will address it promptly. Clarity reduces anxiety. A written correction restores authority. Authority over response restores dignity. Now comes the crucial act. Reaffirm your definite aim aloud, not softly, not apologetically, firmly. Read it as if nothing that occurred today can diminish it. This act prevents shrinkage. Many men allow a bad day to reduce the size of their ambition. They do not announce the reduction publicly. They adjust it privately. Private reduction becomes permanent limitation. When you reaffirm your aim after disappointment, you declare that the event does not outrank your decision. Decision must outrank circumstance. Then, before you rest, perform one small act of controlled excellence. Send the message you avoided. Finish the unfinished task. Organize tomorrow's schedule. Correct the document. Clean the workspace. Refine one detail. This act may appear small. It is not. It reasserts control. It declares that the day ends under your authority, not under the authority of defeat. A salesman rejected 5 times in one afternoon once adopted this discipline. Each evening he wrote the lesson from the day's rejection, refined his approach, and made one additional call before rest. Within months, his results transformed, not because rejection vanished, but because reaction strengthened. A merchant who misjudged inventory did not end his day in frustration. He examined the error, adjusted ordering practice, and reorganized his ledger that night. Loss became instruction. This is leverage. Leverage converts friction into force. Most men accumulate friction without converting it. They carry disappointment home. They rehearse it. They spread it to others. They go to sleep burdened. Burden carried into sleep becomes identity. Identity weakened produces timid effort. Timid effort produces mediocre result. Mediocre result confirms doubt. The cycle repeats. The 10-minute reversal interrupts this cycle. It is not dramatic, it is deliberate. The powerful man does not wait until morning to recover. He recovers before night closes. Recovery builds confidence. Confidence reduces fear of future setbacks. Fear reduced increases boldness. Boldness increases opportunity. Opportunity multiplied increases success. One disciplined ending after a bad day prevents emotional residue from contaminating tomorrow. Repeated nightly, this discipline builds resilience impossible to counterfeit. Say these words quietly during your reversal. Every setback instructs me. I correct immediately. I finish stronger than I began. Notice the difference the next morning. You will awaken not as a victim of yesterday, but as executor of correction decided deliberately. The bad day remains in memory, but not as defeat. It remains as instruction applied. Instruction applied produces growth. Growth compounds quietly. Many require 10 years to learn lessons that could have been extracted nightly. 10 years of repeated error, 10 years of recurring frustration, 10 years of emotional volatility. The 10-minute reversal compresses that time. You will still face difficult days. They will not disappear, but they will no longer accumulate damage. They will accumulate wisdom, and wisdom directed consistently produces power. The final portion will show you how repeated strong endings alter identity permanently, and how men who master this discipline become unshakable, even when conditions are harsh. For the event may bruise you, but response can build you, and built men cannot be easily undone. Part 3, the compounding effect. Why strong endings create unbreakable men. When you practice the discipline of finishing strong after a bad day, something subtle begins to change. At first, the change is internal. It is not visible to others. It is felt as steadiness, a slight firmness in posture, a reduction in panic when difficulty appears. Over time, that steadiness becomes identity. Identity formed through repeated recovery is stronger than identity formed through uninterrupted success. Uninterrupted success can make a man fragile. He begins to depend upon smooth conditions. When friction finally appears, he trembles. The man who has trained himself to respond deliberately after disappointment does not tremble. He expects friction. He greets it calmly. This is not optimism. It is preparation. When you correct immediately after a bad day, you shorten the learning cycle. You do not allow mistakes to harden into habit. You do not allow resentment to become temperament. Temperament, once shaped by repeated reaction, is difficult to reverse. Temperament shaped by disciplined response becomes an asset. Within 30 days of strong endings, you will notice that setbacks feel smaller. Within 90 days, your tone will steady under pressure. Within 1 year, others will describe you as composed, even when circumstances are not. Composure is the visible sign of repeated correction. Others will not know the ritual you follow at dusk. They will not see the silent minutes, the written corrections, the reaffirmed aim. They will only see the result, calm authority. Authority influences opportunity. Opportunity gravitates towards stability. A leader who cannot recover quickly cannot be trusted with responsibility. A merchant who collapses emotionally at loss cannot manage enterprise. A salesman who carries rejection into tomorrow cannot persuade confidently. Strong endings eliminate emotional residue. Emotional residue is costly. It alters tone subtly. It alters decisions slightly. It reduces initiative quietly. Over months, these slight alterations accumulate. That accumulation can cost 20 years. 20 years of diminished boldness, 20 years of cautious language, 20 years of postponed advancement. The man who refuses the second loss refuses those 20 years. Consider two men experiencing identical setbacks. One ends the day in complaint, distraction, and quiet discouragement. The other extracts lesson, writes correction, reaffirms aim, and performs one act of excellence. Tomorrow, their efforts will differ slightly. In 1 week, their posture will differ noticeably. In 1 month, their confidence will diverge. In 1 year, their results will be unrelated. Divergence begins at dusk. This is why what you do after a bad day matters most. Confidence that survives adversity becomes durable. Durable confidence allows greater risk. Greater risk increases reward. Reward reinforces belief. Belief strengthens effort. Effort multiplies outcome. The cycle becomes constructive rather than destructive. You may find that after repeated disciplined endings, you no longer fear bad days. You begin seeing them as training. Training strengthens muscle. Muscle once built does not disappear easily. The same applies to emotional mastery. When insult arrives, you do not react impulsively. You pause instinctively. When plans falter, you examine rather than complain. When fatigue appears, you correct rather than surrender. This steadiness earns respect. Others begin seeking your counsel not because you speak loudly, but because you remain stable when others fluctuate. Stability is rare. Rare qualities command value. Leaders throughout history endured discouraging seasons. They were not spared difficulty. They were distinguished by response. Lincoln faced civil division and personal sorrow. He did not permit daily discouragement to dissolve resolve. He ended each day with intention rather than despair. Industrial pioneers faced financial uncertainty. They corrected constantly. They refined plans nightly. They did not carry defeat unexamined into the next sunrise. The habit of strong endings transforms bad days into rehearsal for greater challenges. If you cannot finish one difficult day with discipline, you cannot finish one difficult year. But if you can master the evening, you can master the season. Say these words quietly after correction. My endings define my strength. No day defeats me twice. I grow stronger through adversity. These words anchor identity. Identity anchored in response becomes unbreakable. When you learn to finish strong, especially when the day was weak, your confidence no longer depends upon favorable conditions. You cease waiting for perfect timing. You act under imperfect conditions with steady judgment. Steady judgment builds enterprise. Enterprise builds wealth. Wealth built upon resilience endures. The crowd seeks relief after difficulty. The powerful seek refinement. Relief soothes temporarily. Refinement strengthens permanently. After months of disciplined endings, you will look back upon former discouragement and marvel at how easily it once unsettled you. That former fragility will seem distant, and you will understand the promise. You do not require perfect days to succeed. You require disciplined endings. The day may challenge you. It may wound your pride. It may test your patience, but it must not conclude without your command. For the man who governs his response governs his destiny, and destiny governed nightly rarely disappoints. You will have many bad days. That is not a warning. It is a certainty. No man who attempts anything worthwhile escapes friction. Plans will falter. Words will be misunderstood. Effort will sometimes return little visible reward. The question is no longer whether bad days will come. The question is who you become because of them. If you have understood the principle laid before you, you now see that the event itself is rarely decisive. It is the ending that determines trajectory. A day may bruise you without breaking you, but if you seal it in weakness, you train yourself to shrink. And shrinking repeated becomes character. Character repeated becomes destiny. Most men do not lose their future in a single dramatic collapse. They lose it in small nightly surrenders. They lower their aim slightly. They soften their efforts subtly. They excuse one failure without correction. They allow mood to outrank decision. 10 years disappear this way, not in catastrophe, but in accumulation. If you practice strong endings, you interrupt accumulation. Each disciplined evening prevents weakness from compounding. Each written correction shortens the distance between error and improvement. Each reaffirmed aim protects identity from erosion. You will not notice the transformation immediately. That is why so few persist. The change is gradual. The posture straightens slightly. The voice steadies subtly. The mind reacts less violently to disappointment. After 30 days, the shift becomes tangible. After 90, visible. After 1 year, unmistakable. Others will describe you as composed. They will say you are resilient. They will call you steady under pressure. They will not see the ritual that built it. They will not know that your power was forged in the final minutes of difficult days. You will know. And that knowledge will produce something rare, self-trust. Self-trust is not loud. It does not boast. It does not seek approval. It rests quietly in the knowledge that no day can defeat you twice. When you know that you can recover deliberately, you cease fearing setbacks. Fear loses leverage. Without fear, decision becomes clearer. With clear decision, action becomes firmer. Firmer action produces stronger result. Strong result compounds. Compounded strength builds freedom. Many men pursue freedom through money alone. Yet money without emotional discipline is fragile. It can vanish under pressure. Emotional discipline, once built, remains. If you can master the evening after a bad day, you can master enterprise. If you can master enterprise, you can master income. If you can master income, you can master independence. This is the hidden ladder. The world sees triumph and assumes talent. It sees confidence and assumes natural gift. It sees calm under fire and assumes personality. You now understand the truth. Calm under fire is trained. Confidence after disappointment is practiced. Resilience is rehearsed. And it is rehearsed at dusk. There will be evenings when you do not wish to sit in silence. Evenings when distraction feels easier. Evenings when fatigue whispers, "Tomorrow will be fine." Tomorrow will not correct what tonight seals. Correction delayed becomes habit. Habit ignored becomes limitation. Do not allow the day to conclude without your authority. Stand upright, extract lesson, write correction, reaffirm aim, finish with one act of excellence, repeat. Repeat when you are tired, repeat when you are discouraged, repeat when you feel insignificant. Repetition builds inevitability. Inevitable men do not fear bad days, they use them. Say these words whenever disappointment visits. I refuse the second loss. My response is my power. No day defines me without my consent. These words are not comfort, they are command. If you adopt this discipline consistently, you will save more than years. You will save identity. You will prevent the slow erosion that steals ambition quietly. 10 years can vanish through repeated weak endings. 10 years can be gained through repeated strong ones. The choice arrives nightly. You cannot control every event that enters your day, but you can control how it leaves. Let no day leave you weaker. Let each one leave you instructed. And in time, you will discover something extraordinary. Bad days no longer threaten you, and they train you. And a trained man, disciplined in response, cannot be easily defeated.